how avoidants react when they lose the right person. You know what's one of the most ironic things in relationships? The people who push you away the hardest are often the ones who feel your absence the deepest. When someone with avoidant tendencies loses the right person, the person who saw them, accepted them, loved them despite the walls, they don't just walk away unaffected. No, it eats at them. But here's the catch. They often won't admit it. Not to you, not to their friends, not even to themselves. Instead, they'll start to feel it in ways they don't understand. A sense of emptiness, a restlessness. They might throw themselves into work or dating apps or distractions, and for a while, it might even look like they've moved on. But underneath, they know. They know they let go of someone who got it. Someone who made intimacy feel safe, even when they didn't know how to receive it. You see, avoidants fear closeness because it feels like a loss of control. So they sabotage it. But because they're hoping you will. But the hardest truth? Regret doesn't always lead to change. Some avoidants stay stuck in cycles their whole life, missing person after person who was actually right for them. So if you're the one who walked away, know this. It's not that you weren't enough. You were more than enough. But they weren't ready to receive what you had to give. And if they ever become ready, it will be because they lost someone like you. Let that be your peace. When someone with avoidant tendencies loses the right person, there's a common misconception that they simply move on without much thought. On the surface, it may look like they've brushed it off, like they're unaffected. They don't reach out. They don't cry publicly. They don't post about heartbreak. But what most people don't realize is that avoidants are masters of emotional suppression, not because they don't feel, but because they don't know how to sit with those feelings. They were often conditioned to believe that vulnerability is dangerous, that needing someone makes them weak, that showing emotion invites abandonment or rejection. So when they lose someone who truly saw them, someone who got past their defenses and made them feel safe in love, it doesn't just disappear into thin air. It stays with them. It lingers in quiet moments, in their subconscious and in their behavior, even if they won't say a word about it. Avoidants don't usually mourn the loss out loud. Instead, they internalize it. The regret shows up in unexpected ways. A restless night, a snap of irritation at something unrelated, a sudden desire to text you but stopping themselves at the last second. They'll scroll past your name in their contacts. They'll hover over your Instagram story. They'll hear a song that reminds them of you and immediately change it just to avoid the flood of emotion they don't know how to process. But make no mistake, they feel it. And when the person they lost was the one who truly understood them, who gave them patience and warmth that caused them to sabotage something real, they bury it. They become haunted not just by your absence, but by the version of themselves they were with you, the one they didn't have the courage to hold on to. That inner conflict becomes the quiet ache they carry, even as they pretend everything's fine. After an avoidant loses the right person, their immediate reaction often isn't sadness, it's distraction. They might throw themselves into their work, obsess over the gym, binge on hobbies, or suddenly become hypersocial. On the outside, it can look like they're doing great, like they've bounced back effortlessly. But this reaction isn't about moving on. It's about avoidance. The very mechanisms they use to keep intimacy at arm's length in the relationship now become tools to avoid the pain of losing it. Their distractions aren't healing strategies, they're shields. Because sitting still means feeling something they've spent their entire emotional life trying to avoid. Vulnerability, loss, and regret. The truth is, when you've been emotionally self-protective for so long, pain doesn't always register in the usual ways. Avoidants tend to compartmentalize their feelings, pushing difficult emotions into a mental back room. But what's locked away doesn't disappear, it festers. The sense of absence grows slowly. Maybe at first it's just a quiet restlessness they can't explain. Then it becomes a dull ache when they realize conversations feel more surface level without you. It shows up when they reach a personal goal and instinctively want to share it with someone who no longer answers their messages. It's in those everyday moments where your absence is suddenly impossible to ignore. The longer they distract themselves, the more they notice the void. The person who used to bring peace, warmth, and connection is no longer there. But even then, reaching out feels terrifying. It would mean acknowledging that they need something or someone, and that strikes at the very core of their avoidant wiring. So they suppress again, quietly, privately, that they could go back. But because they never gave themselves permission to fully feel the grief when it happened, it returns in waves, often when they least expect it. The sense of loss doesn't vanish with time. It grows in the silence they created to protect themselves. When avoidants lose the right person, they rarely chase. Reaching out would mean confronting the vulnerability they've worked so hard to avoid. So they don't send the text, they don't make the call, but they watch silently from a distance. They may no longer be physically present in your life, but emotionally they remain tethered in ways they struggle to admit even to themselves. Social media becomes their window. They scroll through your posts, watching your life unfold. They notice the places you go, the people you're with, the way you're smiling. And even if they don't double tap or leave a comment, they're paying attention. They begin to interpret things in your photos and captions, reading between the lines. Is that a new person? Are you happier now? Are you thinking about them? They want to know that they still exist in your mind, even as they stay silent. It's a strange kind of presence, hovering just out of sight, hoping you'll make the first move so they don't have to risk rejection or exposure. In their mind, if you reach out, they won't have to wrestle with the shame of walking away from something meaningful. It gives them a sliver of hope without having to take emotional responsibility. Behind this behavior is a fear of being forgotten. Avoidants often convince themselves during the relationship that they don't need anyone, that closeness is dangerous, that independence is the safest option. But once the right person is gone, they begin to feel something they couldn't process when they were with you: connection. The very thing they kept pushing away now becomes the thing they miss. And instead of admitting that directly, they turn it into a quiet longing. Watching from afar becomes a substitute for real intimacy, a safe, risk-free way of staying close without being vulnerable, afraid to make the move. And all the while, they're hoping you'll be the one to break the silence, because it's easier to be chased than to admit they wish they hadn't let you go. Even when an avoidant realizes they've lost someone special, someone who saw through their walls and offered real connection, it doesn't always result in change. That's one of the hardest truths to accept, especially if you were the person who loved them. You might imagine that once they feel the regret, the awareness will kick in and they'll come running back, ready to do the work. But emotional insight doesn't always equal transformation. In fact, avoidants can spend years knowing they sabotaged something real without ever developing the tools or courage to do anything different. The reason for this runs deep. Avoidant attachment isn't just a behavior pattern. It's a protective mechanism that was often built early in life. It's a way of staying safe by staying emotionally distant. So even if they feel the pain of losing someone meaningful, their default setting is still to retreat, shut down, and protect. The heartbreak may open a window where they begin to see what they did wrong, but that doesn't mean they're equipped to step into emotional accountability. Many avoidants are deeply uncomfortable with vulnerability, not because they don't care, but because caring means exposure, and exposure means potential hurt. So instead of leaning into growth, they may double down on independence. They may tell themselves they're better off alone or that no one really understands them. They cling to these beliefs not because they're true, but because they help them avoid confronting the painful reality that they pushed away love out of fear. Regret without growth becomes a cycle, one where they keep losing good people and never quite learn how to hold on to them. Sometimes they'll try again, but not in a way that's different. They'll reach out without addressing the core issues. They might flirt with one who got close. You saw their potential. You witnessed the vulnerable parts they rarely showed. But potential isn't the same as readiness. And even if they know they lost someone rare, that knowledge alone isn't enough to break the cycle. Change doesn't happen just because someone misses you. It happens when the pain of staying the same finally outweighs the fear of growing. When someone with avoidant tendencies lets go of a person who genuinely loved them, the aftermath can leave that person questioning your worth. You might wonder if you were too much, too emotional, too needy. You may ask yourself why someone who claimed to care could walk away so easily or pull back just when things were starting to feel real. It's natural to internalize that behavior as a reflection of your value, but that's not what's happening. What's happening right now is your mind naturally uncovers an internal document that you call your private record. Their fear of closeness, their retreat, their silence. It's not about your worth. It's about their inability to receive love, not your failure to give it. Avoidants often push away love precisely because it feels so powerful. When they meet someone who offers consistent affection, emotional safety, and genuine connection, it stirs something uncomfortable in them. It feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar can feel threatening. They've likely spent years believing that needing others equals weakness, that emotional closeness leads to loss, or that love is conditional. So when you show up with warmth and patience, they may admire it, but not know what to do with it. That inner conflict, wanting connection but fearing it, can cause them to self-sabotage, to pull away right when they should lean in. When they lose someone like you, they feel it. Maybe not in ways you'll ever see, maybe not in a grand gesture or a heartfelt apology, but there's often a quiet recognition that what they had was rare. Still, that recognition does persistent, open, present, and that level of emotional intimacy requires strength to hold. They couldn't meet you there, not because you asked for too much, but because they weren't yet capable of standing in that space with you. Your love wasn't wasted. It was real, and it will be received by someone who's ready, not just to feel it, but to return it. If they ever grow, it will be because of what you showed them. Let that be the part you hold on to. So, if you've ever found yourself grieving the loss of someone avoidant, wondering if you were the problem, let this truth settle in. You weren't. You showed up with love. You brought patience. You gave someone the rare chance to be truly seen. And if they couldn't receive it, that doesn't mean you offered too much. It means they weren't prepared to handle something real. Avoidants often feel the most when it's too late to act. But healing doesn't always look like them coming back. Sometimes it looks like you moving forward. Knowing your worth wasn't diminished by someone else's fear. You can't fix someone's readiness. You can't teach someone how to love if they're still afraid of being loved. But you can honor the love you gave and know it was never a mistake to offer it. Because one day, someone will meet you with the same emotional depth and courage you were ready to give all along. And when that happens, you'll realize why it didn't work with anyone else. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope this message brought you clarity, peace, or maybe just the comfort of feeling understood. If you needed this reminder, I see you. You're not alone. You're not too much. You're just waiting for someone who's ready. Take care of your heart and never apologize for how deeply you feel. Until next time, thank you.